apologize for our tardiness. This is the May meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Before we get started, I want to make a few announcements for those joining us for the first time. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body, and as such, the latitude for acting on applications is somewhat limited by state statute and city ordinance. This meeting is being recorded, and those appearing before the board will need to come and identify themselves, give their address, and then be sworn in for the record. Additionally, all motions that are made in this meeting will be of the affirmative nature. That does not mean that necessarily that the motion will be approved or that the person making the motion intends to vote affirmatively, but the language of the will be of the affirmative nature when the motion is made. Each applicant will have the opportunity to withdraw the application up until the time that the motion is made. That is because there are limitations as to when an applicant can reapply for the same request once the motion fails. So you will have that opportunity following up until the time the motion is made. At this time, will you call the roll?
Here.
Ms. Bowden? Here. Ms. Cliff? Here. Alderman Gibson?
Here.
Chairman Sisson?
Here. Now that a quorum has been established, the minutes from the March meeting have been circulated.
Move to approve.
If you'll call the roll, please. And I apologize, I said the March minutes, I meant the April minutes.
Thank you.
So, sorry, April minutes for our April meeting.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Ms. Cliff?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. Those minutes are approved. We'll next move to the next item on our agenda regarding Harvest Church. I'm sorry. If I can swear in the staff, if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. And I'll turn it over to staff then to make their comments on our first item.
To increase the size of a parking lot. This property is located on Winchester Road at the intersection with Forest Hill Irene. It is in the R single-family residential zoning district. Institutional uses such as a church are allowed in the R zoning district with a use on appeal. And accessory uses to that institutional use such as a parking lot is also allowed with a use on appeal. This property, they did receive uses on appeal previously for an expanded parking lot and for the church. Here you see the site right now as it is under construction. The previous uses on appeal granted were to expand the sanctuary building here, and there'll be an education building here, and also to construct the parking lot there. Per section 23-235, the congregation would require approximately 260 parking spaces. Through previous approvals, the site has 547 parking spaces. Currently, they are requesting a use on appeal to increase the parking by another 130 spaces, bringing the total up to 677 parking spaces. There are various reasons for this. The main one is that the congregation is expanding. It also has 3 separate churches that meet at the same worship time, and they cannot all be accommodated by the existing parking lot. Planning Division has in the past suggested exploring other solutions, such as a parking agreement with the neighboring commercial districts, adding another worship time or separating out the worship times of the different churches. The property owners have instituted an agreement with the property over here, a commercial property, and they do use that parking already and still haven't met their parking need. As mentioned, the current request before you, is for a parking lot expansion here at the front of the site for 130 spaces. There will be a landscape buffer along here. Here is the site plan that shows the landscape buffer, and then also a rendering that shows the landscape buffer and the retaining wall that would be at the edge of this parking lot expansion. In considering a use on appeal to expand the current parking lot use, there are 4 criteria that the Board of Zoning Appeals is to consider. 1, whether or not the approval will impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent property. 2, will it unreasonably increase the congestion on public streets? And 3, increase the danger of fire and public safety? And finally, 4, in any other way impair the public health, safety, and comfort of the inhabitants. This parking lot expansion had come before you previously in March and was denied. The applicant last month requested that the rules be waived and that they be able to reapply for the parking lot expansion, and they have adapted their plans as we just discussed. The previous request asked for a variance to expand the parking down into here, into the front yard setback. This current request does not involve a variance. They have moved the parking behind the front yard setback with the landscape buffer. If the use on appeal is granted, the applicant will then move forward to the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission for a revised site plan. At that time, the traffic and parking will be discussed in more detail, as will drainage plans and landscaping plans. There is currently 1 outstanding code violation on the site. There's a temporary sign located here that does not have a temporary sign permit, so it is requested that the applicants come to code enforcement and the planning division to rectify the unpermitted sign. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments for staff?
Question for staff. What is your recommendation as far as this project?
Staff's recommendation is for the project. Staff has worked with the applicant to try to come up with some other solutions for the parking expansion. They are meeting the code with this parking lot expansion by not encroaching into the front yard setback or covering up too much of the site with impervious surface. They are going to be well above the parking requirement for this site, and one of the concerns previously was that this is at a gateway to the city with the corner of Winchester and Forest Hill Irene, and trying to make that parking lot look as attractive as possible, since this is going to be a very visible parking lot, and they have provided a landscape plan there, as you see.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions of staff? All right, thank you very much. At this time, I want to open the floor for somebody on behalf of the applicant to come and speak. I do want to note just that we have, as staff has mentioned, we've heard this application before, and just in light of time constraints, we're happy to give you some time to speak to us if you have anything new to add or additional things you want us to consider. And if you'll state your name and your address.
My name is Spencer Ray, 1896 Steeplebrook Cove, 38016.
And then if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to make based on the last meeting, and we do appreciate y'all agreeing to reconsider this, but a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. We now are, I think, 117 feet behind the curb from the edge of our property or our parking lot on that south end of the parking lot, and I think 95 feet from the right-of-way. And so we took those 40 parking spaces and we got rid of those and moved those to the east, and that does 2 things. It creates circular access for this whole area. It also provides access to the south entranceway to the existing sanctuary and for the people at Forest Hill Baptist Church. And so that was something that everyone, I think I stated last time, that everyone was coming into the church from the east, that Forest Hill side, which is really where we have the minimal amount of parking. And so what this does is it opens up this whole parking area to the people who are actually meeting in that sanctuary, which that's a great thing. And Regina, are you on the computer? Whoever's on the computer, if they could go back to the overall site plan. Oh, sorry. Okay. Just a couple other items is, as part of our overall plan now, we now have a consistent 20-foot landscape easement or buffer along that north property line, which before it meandered anywhere from 5 to about maybe 18 or 19. There was one existing structure that the church had that was a utility shed, and that's gone. And so we added this parking. We're now using about 94 spaces within these commercial areas where the church office space is and a child care center. So if you take the additional parking, the additional 130 spaces that we're asking for, it really should meet our needs for not, 10 years from now, but really what the church is doing right now. And so last Sunday, if you use just those numbers, we have 547 existing spots, and we do have 43 of those being used but for construction. So those spaces are being lost, but we're using 94 from the commercial buildings where we're renting space and 28 from the Christian Academy. That leaves you, that's a total of 626. But I was there, I go to the early service, and I can tell you that almost every drive aisle, people are parked against the curb. And so from what if you look at it on a typical Sunday morning, and this last Sunday summer is an average attendance, it'll go up in August. I think that these spaces that we're asking for, if we have them built, that we will use those spaces. And so we feel like that the landscape screen is going to give a really a nice focal point when someone pulls in the church. And then lastly, we've added 2 major access points onto Winchester and got those off Forest Hill Irene. And as I said last time, we protected the Forest Hill street frontage for those people who live on Forest Hill. And we really appreciate y'all looking at this and considering it.
Is there any questions or comments of the applicant?
Just a comment. Mr. Ray, sometimes meetings of the minds really works out well, and it looks like when we rejected it, y'all come back with a better plan, better for you and better for the city, in that you're not going to be in our setback area, which is great. You're going to be better utilization of the space in getting to the front entrance of the church, which is great. It looks like the landscaping plan is better than we anticipated. So I think that's going to be a win-win for everybody. So I applaud you and Mr. Rogers and the congregation for working this out. The question I have for you, though, is what about the temporary sign that staff alluded to?
Next week, we will either have the sign down or we will be in your office with a permit. This young man right here, who's kind of Bill's right-hand man, is going to handle that, Matt Mitchell.
Staff, is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Other comments, questions? I do also want to echo Mr. Harless and appreciation of you guys coming back and coming up with a good plan, it appears, and with some landscape and also addressing an issue that was really unrelated to what you were coming here for, but we got to hear about as well by addressing that landscape buffer on the back end. So I appreciate all your efforts on that front. At this time, I do want to open the floor for it. We have a few minutes left for the applicant side. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? Although certainly you don't have to. If there's anybody here that would like to speak in opposition to this application. All right. There being no one else that wishes to speak on this application, do I have a motion?
Second.
All right. And if you'll call the roll.
Mr. Harless?
For all the reasons I previously stated, I vote yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Cliff?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. And the motion is approved. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, 1712 Paddington Park Lane. At this time, I'll turn it over to staff to give us a report on that matter.
Thank you. The next item before us is 1712 Paddington Park Lane. This is located in the Somerset subdivision. It's a new subdivision, smaller lots in the T3 Smart Code area. That's a suburban zoning district. Here you can see the location of the lot. This, to give you a frame of reference, this is Germantown Road, and this is Neshoba, and there's the lot. And as mentioned, it's in the T3 Smart Code area, and it abuts an R1 district here. Oops, sorry, a little fast. In February 2018, Code Compliance conducted a final inspection of a pool permit and fence permits. Both the pool and the fence had acquired permits. However, when doing the final inspection, it was discovered that the fence was over the 6-foot height limit, and also that there was a pergola or arbor. The applicant is defining it as an arbor. Per the city's definitions, it fits more pergola, but it's still the same structure. I have it here. That was not included in the permit. The property owner had not realized when he had contracted with the workers that that had not been part of the permit. The pergola does not quite fit the definition of a pergola per the city's ordinance. It is over 8 feet in height. It's 8 feet 8 inches. Per the definition of the city's code, it should be 8 feet. And also per the definition of the city's code, it's supposed to have only a 50% solid roof. This has a complete solid roof. Thus, the owner is now requesting a variance to keep the pergola arbor in its current location at the 8 feet 8 inches height, and then with solid roof. The second variance that's being requested is for the fence. The fence is at some point 6 feet 6 inches with a 7-foot high post. The reason for this is that per the subdivision covenants, the fences are supposed to be of the same style, the cap and a post like this, and it's also supposed to meet this existing subdivision fence. You can see here how it meets the subdivision fence, and then also here. The problem is that, as you can see in this picture over here, the subdivision fence at certain points sits higher than the subject property. And due to the change in topography, sometimes the fence is then 6 feet 6 inches to meet up with the neighborhood fence. The property owner is here to discuss these two variances if you have questions, and that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? All right, thank you very much. At this time, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this variance? On behalf of the applicant, I should say. If you'll come forward. Mm-hmm. Yes, if you're, yes. And if you'll state your name and your address, and then I'll swear you in.
Yeah, it's Robert Longfield, 1712 Paddington Park Lane, 38138.
And if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so new resident and just coming in. So yeah, this was all construction actually done before we closed the house. So I was unaware that permits weren't done appropriately. So, you know, all I knew is I had to have a fence in before I closed the pool for safety reasons. So we did that. We did have a requirement to try and match up the fence. Just so you know, on the lots, as far as one lot is still empty on the one side, and it's just on the unfinished, unstained fence is the part that's in question. So, so you can see, you can see the stain versus the unstained. So on each side, we just basically had to bring the sides down to the street. So if you go back, I'm sorry, to here, you can slightly see where I did a highlighter on each side. It's the highlighter sides is where the fence has been put in. So we put that in. The biggest issue is that, and it's hard to tell in some of these pictures, you can tell, well, a little bit. If you see the black line I did on the picture on the left-hand side, you can see there's points of dramatic slope, which causes the difference in the height that we had to do, because the total difference on one side is around 2.5 feet slope down, and on the other side it's about a 1.5 foot slope down. So the other thing is to keep the fence from sagging. You know, sometimes you got a big slope, you do a fence, it'll sag over time. We had to stair step it, and that's where it gave some difference in height as we were stair stepping it down, and because of the slope in the grade. I will tell you that on the one side that a homeowner has just moved in, they're obviously pleased. They split that side of the fence with me from a cost. So just so you know, it's like I wasn't offending any of the neighbors on that side. In this process, I've talked to the neighbor behind me who's very complimentary of the fence as well. And again, I'm requesting a variance. If anything, I don't think it needs to be shorter. Just one thing that'd be in Germantown police records. We had a little boy climb over on Good Friday, climb over the back fence, and we looked out and my wife saw a 5-year-old in the backyard. So that gives us concern, obviously, with that. So, you know, we're doing what we think to address that, and you can see in our fence proposal, we didn't even have the slats or anything there, so that would make it impossible for somebody to really climb, a small child to climb over. So we've done that and asked that we can have a variance for that slight height difference because of the slope and the grade over there. The pergola, I will tell you, it's again, it is 8 inches higher than a requirement. You can see because of the level that the first floor of these homes were built, they are a little bit higher, so it's still well below the gutter line from a visual standpoint. But more importantly, unless you're standing right in front of my lot, you really can't see it, except for the one neighbor that shared the common fence with me. They're really the only neighbor that has good visibility to where that pergola sits. And from a coverage standpoint, it's only like about 2.5 feet wide. It's long, 13 feet. I mean, the plan is for my grill to go right there. But that's, it's only about 2.5 feet wide. So again, I don't feel like it's imposing on anybody's view or coverage from that standpoint. So we are asking an exception to both those items, and glad to go into more detail if there's some questions.
All right, is there questions of the applicant?
Mr. Longfield, did the pergola get built after you bought the home?
No, it was built by the person who did the pool.
So before you closed, this was already built?
Correct, yes, sir.
And how about the fence?
The same. Yes, sir.
So it would have been difficult for you to get a variance or to get approval if you weren't the owner, right?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments to the homeowner? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the variance? If you'll come up. And again, just be sensitive of time. If there's any brief comments you'd like to make, if you'll state your name and address.
My name is Earl Williams. I live at 1691 Paddington Park, so just down the street. Germantown 38138.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
I won't comment on pergola, but I will talk as it relates to the fence because we were the number 3 people in the neighborhood, so we've kind of watched everything built up around us, and we love the neighborhood. I really don't know what else Robert could have done really to get his fence to work well, because from a visual standpoint, it looks great. He's got the slope in the yard, and he's really kind of in a spot where if he doesn't build it somewhat close to how he did, I don't know over the long term how it's going to stand up and how it's going to look. So I think it looks great. I think it adds to the neighborhood, I think, from a security standpoint, and certainly I'd hate to hear that he's already had problems with somebody in his backyard, because that scares you to death as a parent and a child falling into a pool. But anyway, I think it adds visually to the neighborhood, and I think it's something that's very acceptable, and I hope that y'all provide a variance for that.
Thank you very much. At this time, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this variance? Oh, And if you'll come forward and state your name and your address.
I'm John Vaughn. I live at 7894 Neshoba.
And I'm sorry, John,
I live behind what we're talking about here.
and your name is John Vaughn?
Vaughn, right.
Okay.
7894 Neshoba. And I don't know that I
Oh.
oppose, I don't know that
If I could
oppose-
swear you in real
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
sorry.
I do.
Okay, you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay.
But I've been a longtime resident, 38 years in that particular house that I'm talking about. I'm not hearing what I think is disturbing me, other than the fact that if I'm hearing it correctly, the fence that's presently there will be brought up to equal what the fence is behind that one?
No.
It's not? Is it still going to be the same height? Okay, that explains that part of it. Okay. The thing, I guess, that disturbs me is for the last several years, we in that particular neighborhood, behind all of the clear cutting, the movement of large machinery, the rattling of pictures on the walls, mirrors and things of that nature. Actually, some things have fallen. When it was clear cutted, there's been winds that have come through that particular area because that's the northwest coming to the southeast through that particular area. The winds have been so strong with the dust that the clear cut made, I couldn't even see the house that was behind me out my back door because of the dust that it created. In another incident, it created one of the trees that I had to fall, and I encountered that. But that's beyond that things right now, and where the discussion really needs to be. Are we just talking about this kind of development occurring only for this house, or is it for that entire neighborhood? And if on the other side of all of that, are those of us that are there, are we able to come in and also do something very similar to this if we so choose to do so? That's a question that
Those are great questions, Mr. Vaughn, and what I would say, the area that is in question, we are only speaking of this one particular
that's
parcel.
the impression that I've got.
Exactly. So you're right about that, and they are actually in a different designation. They are in the T3 section for the zoning, as opposed to where you are. So
I do follow that.
I would never want to answer a question, a hypothetical of
Right.
what you could build, because you would certainly go through the process of the planning department and things like that.
Once you open the door, other things are typically allowed to come through the door after that, just as from what I have observed over time.
So
I would also like to suggest, because of the beauty of the forest that used to be behind us, that the people that are in that area start putting up trees and shrubbery very similar to what has been put up across the street on Germantown Road across from the village. That would certainly put, I don't want to call it a wall, but it would put us a line of beauty back, that we that are on the open area being able to see the fireworks. I'll just put it this way. The fireworks at Shelby Farm, I was able to see them from my house that I've never seen before, just because all of that was cleared. Now that the homes are growing there, some of that has been cut out. Just observations on my part. I'm not opposed to, again, what I think I'm hearing as what needs to occur there.
Thank you, sir.
But I wish they would at least do something to return it back to the beauty that once was there that is no longer there. And the back of a house is not that much of a beauty.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
Right. Yes, thank you for your comments. I appreciate you coming. At this time, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? At this time, is there any comments or questions, further questions of our commission.
Madam Chairperson, are we going to vote on each of the variances independently?
Yes, sir. There are two motions, just for, as an explanation, there'll be two motions, one regarding the fence and one regarding the pergola that we will hear. So at this time, I believe the pergola was listed first in the application. So at this time, do I have anyone who would like to make a motion?
In regard to the pergola, I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. If you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Cliff?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Mr. Harless?
Because there's 8 inches here, but the homeowner did not build this. It was done by, I assume, the developer. I'm voting yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
I am also going to be voting yes, and just regarding the new zoning district and some confusion that was had over that. So at this time, I'd like to vote yes on that variance. So that motion passes. At this time, do I have a second motion?
In regard to the fence, move to approve.
Second.
If you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Ms. Cliff?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes, due to the slope, I was vote yes.
Mr. Harless?
The ordinance allows us to vote to make modifications and approvals when the unusual slope of the property warrants it, and in this case, I believe it does. I vote yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes, I will be voting in favor of the variance due to the uniqueness of the topography.
Chairman Sisson?
For the reasons previously stated, I will also vote yes. So that motion passes. At this time, is there any old business that needs to come in front of our commission?
There was one thing I noticed in the packet when I was reading it, that it seems like the gate needed to have a spring-loaded or something latch on it. I don't know if that's in place now, but it was a requirement. So, were you aware of it? That
Yes, I was not at the time, but
Okay.
that. I think it was one other thing that we.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And thank you, Commissioner Yulhorn, for your diligence in reading the package.
It's that reading thing. I try to do it every day.
At this time, I'm unaware of any old business that needs to come in front of our commission, so I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.